Hey everybody, welcome to a slightly late weekly news recap for the 12th to the 18th of August 2024. So, this week, all of the games decided to put out their release dates for some reason. I don't know why, but they all decided now, this week, that's when we're going to put our release dates out. So that's what's happening. So first up, we have from Retro Realms, there it is. I got in before it said it. Anyway, these are two new games coming from Retro Realms, based on the Halloween franchise for one, and Ash vs. the Evil Dead for the other. So these are pretty cool throwbacks to some of the video game film tie-ins, we'll say, from the 90s. This is the kind of thing you would normally get. It did not look anywhere close to this good. But this is what you would typically get. So this is pretty cool. And I don't think Ash has had many of these kind of retro type games. I know Halloween has, definitely. Friday the 13th has had quite a few as well. I don't think Evil Dead has gotten many. So this is Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which is specifically the TV show rather than the films. But the films do make allusions to the actual... Sorry, not the films. The TV show makes allusions to the films as well. Anyway, October 18th. Both of those games coming out. If you get both of them together, there's some crossover functionality between them as well. On top of that, 2 Point Games as their latest 2 Point game coming out. So the 2 Point games, if you're not familiar, started off with 2 Point Hospital, which was kind of a spiritual successor to Theme Hospital, which, if you're not familiar with that, was essentially a management sim where you took over a hospital, but it was done in a kind of comedic, kind of jokey way. You get some like made up diseases that were just kind of funny, rather than, not dealing with people with like cancer or terminal illnesses or things like that. It was like fun things, the jokey kind of made up stuff. Then they moved on to 2 Point Campus, which is more of a university thing for that. Same deal, you're managing a university, but people take, degrees in becoming a knight or becoming a wizard or robotics and then like kind of other things. I know robotics is like an actual field that you can study in university, but the point is 2 Point Campus took the same kind of comedic vibe to it. And now 2 Point Museum is their next thing. So this is all CG, you're not seeing any actual gameplay, but it still has the kind of comedic stylings that the 2 Point games have. Very British humor. I'm not sure what this guy's doing. I think he's trying to steal the plush toy. I'm not sure. I'm not really getting it. Anyway, it's clearly modeled off the British Museum. It looks very, very similar to it. Anyway, this one does not have a release date. It's just soon, eventually, at some point. Who knows when. Okay, so we'll get into games that we've already heard about, and now they have release dates. So Dragon Age The Veilguard, the long-awaited Dragon Age 4. It's been quite some time since the last Dragon Age. So it's getting its release date, Halloween, October 31st of this year, and we'll figure out what the hell happened after Dragon Age Inquisition. I will not attempt to recap the story for you, just go play the games. Just play them anyway. Maybe get the cliff notes of Dragon Age 2. Play the rest of them. Maybe get that mod that takes out all of the shitty quests from Dragon Age Inquisition. When they made Inquisition, a lot of RPGs were coming off World of Warcraft and trying to sort of ape it, make it a kind of MMO, but also it's a single player game. There's a lot of just filler shit in Dragon Age Inquisition that shouldn't have been there because it's not an MMO, but whatever. There's a mod to get rid of it, but obviously you can't do that on consoles. Anyway, Dragon Age The Veilguard, the kind of gist of it is the old gods are back. They're mad. They're corrupt, I think, or corrupted, possibly, by the Blight. On top of that, magic seems to be coming back to races that typically didn't have magic. There's a bit here that shows like dwarves that are able to use magic. Traditionally in Dragon Age, they aren't. On top of that, in the Dragon Age lore, mages can be cut off from magic as a way to sort of prevent them from becoming blighted and taken over by evil energies and stuff like that. So they get cut off from magic. But it seems like that is being undone by whatever this Return from the Gods is. There's a lot of really cool niche things about Dragon Age lore that will change now because of that. And I won't go into all of it. Should I do I might do a replay of like the whole series on the channel. I've been thinking about it for a while. I've just wanted a decent PC to do it. Anyway, Morrigan has Flemeth's crown. If you've played the series, you know what that means. And that is, huh? Why is she wearing the crown? She hates Flemeth. Anyway, we'll see. All right, other game that also has been in development, not quite as long as Dragon Age Veilguard, but it just sort of seems like it's been there for a while. So the Plucky Squire is a 2D/3D/ mixed reality / weird lots of other things, but it is essentially a Legend of Zelda game, but the game is not constrained to the media it's on or something. So it starts off with you just being in a storybook, but you can very quickly like jump out of the storybook and start walking around on desks, playing with kids' toys. You end up in the living room, going around couches and stuff like that. It is like very charming, and I imagine a complete fucking nightmare to develop. But yeah, and they're wondering, hey, it's been delayed. We haven't heard about release dates for a while, but we've been seeing a lot of trailers for it. It's like, what's going on? What's happening? So release-wise, it is going to be September 12th, I think. No, there's a 17 there, and I don't think that changes. So I think it's September 17th of this year. Come on, you'll find it. There it is. There's 2024. So 17th September, the Plucky Squire. It'll be on, I think it's on everything. Find out now in a second. If I skip ahead, it'll just be over. Yeah, that sure looks like everything to me. Okay. Plucky Squire, 17th of September. Hollow Body is a kind of throwback survival horror game that I've been keeping an eye on for a while. I kickstarted this 2 years ago, maybe 3 years at this point. So it's got a real PS1 throwback to Silent Hill, very Silent Hill. It's set more in a close future setting. There's a bit of cyberpunk to it, but there's enough of like contemporary technology around as well that it's not quite that far in the future. You were playing character whose name I've forgotten, apologies, but you are kind of like a black market smuggler, and a friend of yours has gone out into the Badlands. They haven't returned in a while. You go out looking for them. Your hover car crashes because technology is all screwy outside of the main cities. You get marooned effectively in the Badlands, and now you're trying to, one, find your friend, and then two, try to find a way to get back to civilization. And there's, some spooky shit happening while you're out there. There's maybe a reason everybody is holed up in mega cities instead of spread out into the countryside. So yeah, just think like Silent Hill, but Silent Hill in the UK instead of in the US. And you kind of got what Hollow Body's going for. The demos have been really, really good. So yeah, looking forward to this. Anyway, this has a release date now of 12th of September, I believe. I'm just going to skip ahead. Coming to PC, September 12th. So no console release information for this one yet. It does run fine on the Steam Deck though, so I'll probably just go ahead and play it on PC. I think my Kickstarter pledge is for a console version. I'm not sure. I haven't checked what my actual pledge is in a while. Anyway. Moving on, Shadows of Doubt has been in early access on PC for a good while. So Shadows of Doubt is a procedurally generated detective game, or a procedurally generated immersive sim in a lot of other ways. So you're given like a couple of, a randomly generated case. The city itself, I believe, is always the same, but the people who populate it, what they do, what their daily tasks are, what their routines are, and so on. I believe that changes with every generation. There's a lot of different case types. Some of them are just finding files or discovering who murdered somebody. Some of them are trying to foil assassination attempts, this kind of stuff. It's been pretty cool seeing it come together, and having this done procedurally is always really interesting to see, what the building blocks are and that kind of thing. Anyway, it is leaving early access now, middle of September, I think, because a lot of games are all coming out in around the end of September for this one. So September 26th, everything except the Switch, because I don't think the Switch could handle it. Anyway, moving on. Key Locker. So I played a bit of Key Locker during the last Steam Next Fest. I did find it really interesting. I also found it really hard. So if you've played Transistor, which is by the Supergiant Games, the guys who made Hades, so this was before they made Hades. Transistor kind of tells this tale of a kind of futuristic environment where a singer, at least in Transistor, has her voice stolen, and she's kind of going up against this cabal of people trying to like stifle creativity and stifle rebellion and revolution or whatever. And her songs were riling up the public or something like that. So she's kind of fighting back against that. Key Locker has a lot of that going on. From the small bit that I played of the demo, it's got some pretty good writing. Its combat is probably where I'm a little bit iffy on right now. It is relying very heavily on timing and parrying in the turn-based fights. You know, you're never really resting in the game. You're always trying to be on your toes to be ready to quick time event. And the timing and the window for parrying is extremely small. It's quite frustrating. Even like tutorial fights, I'm being, one-shotted because I'm not getting the timing right. Now, it could be that I simply chose a class that is not good at that kind of thing. Maybe, but I don't think so. So, yeah, I don't know. If they put out another demo after the game itself has been released, maybe we'll see if that's been ironed out. But anyway, September 18th, 2024. Got a lot, as I said, a lot of games all coming out in September. I think there's only a handful that are past September. Speaking of past September, Skydance's Behemoth is a VR title. It's been shown off a couple of times. So Behemoth is effectively Shadow of the Colossus in VR. Almost, because you do have regular enemies to fight as well. So if you've been in the VR space for a while, you'll probably know that there are a lot of these kind of games. Just you against a bunch of guys. It's focusing on like physics combat to try to make that as realistic as possible as they can. So Behemoth has a lot of that going on. This is also coming from the developers of the Walking Dead VR game, Saints and Sinners 1 and 2. Their melee stuff was really good. Their individual, just like one-on-one combat was really well received in Saints and Sinners. So Behemoth is essentially taking that, but now they're going to add these giant creatures. What we haven't seen a ton of is you climbing them, or whether or not you even are able to climb them. There's clearly like a grappling hook. There's clearly an ability for you to interact with the creatures. They're not just like an environmental hazard, like you are fighting them in some ways, like this kind of thing. There's like a glowing glyph thing on its ankle there. This is very similar to Shadow of the Colossus. But I don't believe there's any shot of you actually climbing the thing. So it's possible that you don't, and if you don't, that's a huge missed opportunity. Though I imagine... Oh no, never mind. There's a bit of you climbing it. You're still like incredibly close to the bottom of the ground though. Like, are you ever on its head? Anyway, I imagine that's just like, in VR, that would just be sick immediately. If you're on top of its head and it shakes its head or whatever, it's like, immediately get sick. Who knows? Maybe they're, yeah, okay. Maybe people will just get sick if we do that. Maybe we don't do that. Who knows? Anyway, another VR title, Alien Rogue Incursion? Play? Is it play? It is playing, okay. Alien Rogue Incursion is an Alien VR game. So it's not Alien Isolation. You do have a gun. You are meant to be fighting them. It is, in some ways, a first-person shooter more than anything else. So I believe you are meant to be playing a colonial marine, like the bad game that we don't want to talk about. But anyway, a marine from Aliens, and it's just you against whatever facility you've ended up on. There are xenomorphs, there are facehuggers, there's drones. I imagine there will be like specialized xenomorphs at some point. So this is coming in November, I think, as well. No, December 19th on that one. And Behemoth was November 10th, I think. I forget now what the date for it was. Is it still there if I go back? November 14th. Okay, I was way off. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so we're gonna take a look now at some remasters, remakes that are also have had their release date announced. So Until Dawn is essentially an entire remake of the original Until Dawn, which is a super massive game. Kind of put them on the map for these kind of choose your own adventure horror stuff. And then they branched off into the Dark Pictures anthology. And now they're starting to do some work with the Dead by Daylight people, with the casting of Frank Stone and a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, so this is wasn't their first game exactly, but it was definitely the game that kind of made them a known thing. So they're showing off a couple of the changes here. There's a lighting system, the models have been changed, a little bit higher fidelity. Some interesting things is that they've changed a couple of like camera angles and stuff. Like you don't get the same angle on some scenes. They're presented from different viewpoints. It's not clear if that's a thing, like revised cinematography and production design. The cinematography is just how they lay out the scene. That kind of thing. You couldn't see him actually dragging Ashley the first time around. In the new version you can. Different shots of different people and so on and so forth. Anyway, we'll see how that works out. I'm not super interested in it, to be perfectly honest. Because I played the first one to death. I have it platinumed. I'm more interested just to see what the changes are, but I'm not sure if I care enough for what is probably going to be like $69.99. Anyway, we'll see. If it turns out not to be like a fully priced thing, I might consider it, but I find it unlikely. It's almost certainly going to be a full price deal. Anyway, this is coming October 4. I went too fast. Damn it. I'm gonna guess here. If I had waited like 2 seconds, I probably would have seen the release date. There you go. 4th of October. Pretty sure it's a PlayStation... Console-wise, it's a PlayStation exclusive, so it won't be on Xbox, but it is going to be on PC. Okay, and then last one for release dates. Release dates and remasters and all of that kind of stuff. Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templars, Reforged is a... It's hard to tell necessarily if you consider it a remaster or a remake, because they are repainting a lot of the backgrounds. Character models, even to put it that way, sprites, really. They're glorified sprites in some ways. The original Broken Sword was all like hand-painted backgrounds, and this kind of really traditional animation stuff, which I imagine is now all done on a computer rather than by hand on pen and paper, or transparent, or whatever they used to do it, the ye olde way. Broken Sword is a point-and-click thing, not unlike like the Monkey Island games and that sort of thing. It was a little more serious, but not serious. You know, it's about like Monkey Island was kind of slapstick comedy in some ways, like Pirates of the Caribbean kind of thing. Broken Sword is somewhere. It's not as comedic as Indiana Jones, but like it's close. Like it's like a little more serious than an Indiana Jones film, but not too serious. Anyway, September 19th for that one. Unfortunately now, though, we're going to stop with the release dates and we're going to start with the delays. So games that have been delayed. First up, Stalker 2. We were already aware Stalker had been delayed, so this is kind of just giving you a heads up on this video. It's 35 minutes or so. It's a developer deep dive on the game. The link I have, the video is in Ukrainian. If you speak it, great, good for you. You won't have any issues. I don't. So the closed captions is what I put up with. They seem to do the job. It seemed right. We'll go with that. I never played the original Stalker, but this kind of behind the scenes look at it, if you like, for Stalker 2 has made me kind of want to play the original. I always heard it was like super frustrating and hard to play, so that's kind of what put me off initially. But maybe it's not like that, or maybe the frustration is part of it. Who knows? Anyway, that's a fairly long video, but it is pretty good. It gives you a pretty good indication and idea of what the Stalker 2 will be like. Replaced. So we haven't heard anything about Replaced in quite a while, about 2 years. So Was shown off during one of the Xbox showcases during Gamescom 2021, I think. And then later, it was either the Game Awards the same year or the Summer Game Fest the year after. They showed off a little bit more of Replaced. So Replaced is a side-scrolling pixel art kind of cinematic a Blade Runner type thing. I think the gist of it is you're an AI that is taken over this kind of robot body, or maybe a hybrid thing. You might be a chip in somebody's head that you've taken over, something like that. You're on the run for some reason, and the replace thing is, I think, is the idea is that you are going to be replaced, and you're trying to avoid that. Maybe, not entirely sure. They show off a couple of things here. The first thing they show off is kind of the cinematic platforming, I believe, is how they put it. But there's just the idea is that there's parts where you're going to be running away from people, or there's parts where you'll have to do some kind of platforming, parkour kind of stuff. So a lot of this first section is just showing off that stuff. Things they're showing off. It's got a really cool lighting system. The dynamic camera is pretty cool. So the camera itself is kind of, how to put it, it's like custom camera positions. So it's not necessarily following your character. Like a lot of games will just follow the character, and every now and then it'll cut to like a cinematic shot, whereas this one around, it's more likely to be cutting to a cinematic shot than it is to be following your character. Even though that's exactly what it looks like here. But take my word for it. If you watch the whole video, you'll get a better sense of what they're talking about, really. Anyway, that was one part of it. And then they moved on to the combat segment. I'm just going to scroll ahead here. Scrub ahead, whatever. So combat-wise was kind of one of the things that stood out a lot in the initial trailers. You can see the camera has kind of wobbles when you're attacking. If you get hit, it kind of wobbles a little bit more to indicate that you've been hit and that kind of stuff. But it's got this sort of visceral feel to it because of that. So this is kind of what we're talking about with what they're doing with the camera, because it is quite interesting. But anyone who has played the Arkham series will probably be very familiar with what's going on here, with the symbols appearing above everybody's head and all that kind of thing. So it is very much the Arkham style of combat. You've got your attack button, and if you see like this thing appear over their head, you have another button to counter them, and if it's a red one, you can't counter it and you need to get out of the way. That was the kind of the Arkham rock, paper, scissors combat style that served it really, really well, and then they made it too complicated for Arkham Knight. But anyway, let's not get into that. It looks like it works well. Again, animation-wise and custom stuff, it does seem like they have gone out of their way to make a shit ton of keyframes for the individual animation so that you can flow from one to any other animation, like kind of whenever you want. Which basically means you're not really locked into a combo ever. So this should be a very, very fluid combat, but on top of that, it probably means combat is very hard. I guess we'll see how that plays out. And then the last thing is to kind of point out that the game does have an open-ended section to it where you can just wander around, talk to people, pick up information, pick up missions, requests, and stuff to do in and around the place. So you're not always locked into just heavy action cinematic sequences all the time. There is downtime where you can go buy shit and talk to people and get a feel for the world and that kind of thing as well. Anyway, so having said all that, it's delayed till next year at some point, and there is no release date yet. So who knows when that'll be. Could be very late next year, might not be. Speaking of delayed, again, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has been delayed out to February of next year. It was originally supposed to be at some point at the end of this year, but that's not happening anymore. However, they were quick to point out that they'll have a lot more to show off at Gamescom. Gamescom happening next week on Tuesday. And then, not entirely sure where to put this news, other than the, hey, that's what I wanted, but also not what I wanted in any way at all. Evercade announces its next cartridge, the Legacy of Kain Collection, even though it's missing 3 games, but okay, whatever. So the Evercade is it's like a throwback retro console. You can play a lot of like fairly old games, but I believe the cartridges are custom for the device itself. I don't think it just takes random cartridges. Like, I don't think you can sub in like a Game Boy cartridge and it'll play. I don't know. I think there is a console that does that, but I don't think it's the Evercade. Anyway, it's meant to be a throwback to the older style of consoles that was cartridge based. You swap them in and out. They're big chunky pieces of plastic. It does look like a cool device, but there's so few games for it that it's never really piqued my interest too much. Anything more than that's a fun little novelty. Until they did this, of course. I'm like, Kind of the more interesting one here is Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, because whoever owns the rights for that, it is very difficult to get that game legitimately. Because it's not, as far as I'm aware, it's not owned by Crystal Dynamics. I think it's owned by like Silicon Knights, and they don't really want anything to do with it or something. There's some weird rights issue going on with Blood Omen, specifically the first Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. For some reason, it's always difficult to actually get that game on platforms, on PC, on Steam, whatever, what have you. I think it is on GOG. And I think that's kind of one of the few places you can actually play it legitimately. Anyway, Legacy of Kain collection will have Legacy of Kain Blood Omen and Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which are both the PS1 games. Does it have a release date? I think it's September. I read September somewhere. Released in September. No date. I could have sworn there was a date for it. Anyway, yeah. It's like, yeah, I did want like a re-release of the Legacy of Kain series, but I wanted it on a platform I can play it on, and I wanted all of them, not just two. It's kind of weird. It's also a little... It's like frustrating to call it the Legacy of Kain collection when you're missing 3 games. Like, there were 2 Blood Omens, and there were 2 Soul Reavers. And then there was Legacy of Kain Defiance. If you're not familiar with the series, Blood Omen followed Kain, progenitor of the vampire species-ish, sort of. You have to read into the story. That's technically not right, but we'll read into the story. That's just what we'll go with. And then Soul Reaver followed Raziel, his first lieutenant, the first vampire that he raised up and betrayed him. Kain is kind of a dick. He didn't really betray him, but he said he did. For weird future prophecy reasons. Let's not go into it. The story is complicated enough as it is. But the Soul Reaver games followed Raziel. The Blood Omen games followed Kain. And then Legacy of Kain Defiance. Both of them. It's kind of where the story doesn't wrap up because it was open-ended, but at least one arc of the story kind of ended there. And as much as I wanted a sequel to continue with, it's been long enough that it probably needs to be rebooted at this point, because I don't think too many people are going to follow what was a fairly complex story. There's a lot of time traveling in it, and there's time traveling to overwrite other areas of the time traveling, and it all gets very convoluted after a while. But it was a really cool story. Anyway, moving on. Just really would have wished that was on a platform that I could actually play it on. Anyway, your free Epic game this week, Death's Gambit. Death's Gambit is... It's kind of likened to a 2D Souls or 2D Bloodborne kind of thing. From what I have heard from people playing it, it is a bit too loose. And it does feel like you are getting hit at times when you shouldn't be getting hit, or where the dodge isn't as effective as it should be, or something. It's not as fair, I guess, as the 3D Souls games. Something like that. I don't know. I haven't played it myself. I couldn't tell you. That's what I've heard from people anyway. Anyway, it's free on Epic, so you could figure that out for yourself, what you think. Moving on. Monthly games, so we're hitting the middle of the month, so first up we're going to have the PlayStation Plus catalog editions. So this is for people who are on the PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium tiers, I think, for PlayStation. So this would be additional to your regular PlayStation Plus subscription. This would be on top of that. Anyway, so coming to PlayStation Plus Extra, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It doesn't say if it's the complete edition, but I think it is. If it's the PS5 version, it will be the complete edition. That's what all the DLC, the PS5 patch for it and everything. Outstanding game, if you haven't had a chance to play it. What is unfortunate is that Witcher 1 and 2 are not playable on PlayStation. I believe Witcher 1 is a PC exclusive and Witcher 2 is a PC and Xbox exclusive. Witcher 1 is a bit rough to play, so I would get the cliff notes on that one. Even though I liked it, but it's jank, very much. And The Witcher 2, a lot of people said it was jank as well. I didn't get the impression. Like, it wasn't like super smooth AAA or anything, but I wouldn't have called that jank. I've played jank. I know jank. You guys have seen me play jank. I know jank. Witcher 3, very good. Very, very good game. Definitely give that a shot. Huge game as well, though. Do keep that in mind. It will keep you occupied for a very long time. Wild Hearts is Monster Hunter if it was made by a Western developer instead. Even though it wasn't made by a Western developer, it was made by Omega Force, who are a Japanese developer. I think. Actually, Omega Force might be Chinese. I'm not sure. So Omega Force are the people behind Dynasty Warriors. Wild Hearts does not play anything like Dynasty Warriors. It's more of a... It's very much Monster Hunter, but you do have kind of crafting like you would have in something like Fortnite or Minecraft, where you can like build up platforms and stuff like that to essentially give you a better shot with your bow, or maybe give you a high jump to get onto the big creature or something like that. I'm not sure how well received Wild Hearts was, but I don't think it's getting any more updates or any additional content or stuff like that. So I think EA, when it didn't make them all of the money immediately, they just got bored of it or something, because it was made for EA. Anyway, Cult of the Lamb from Devolver, again, a really cool management thing where you're managing your cult, but then also has a sort of isometric kind of top-down dungeon crawling aspect to it as well. So it's kind of a game of, there's two parts to it. There's the bit where you go in, fight your way through a dungeon, kill the boss at the end of it, collect a bunch of resources and bring it back to your cult, and then there's the bit where you manage the cult. Making sure everybody's healthy, making sure you're sacrificing people to your god, and so on and so forth. It's Cult of the Lamb is really good. I really enjoyed it. Platinumed it as well. Ride 5 is a motorbike racing game. That's it. I'm sure it's fine. I don't play racing games. Your mileage may vary. Watch Dogs 2 has been on PlayStation Plus catalog before, but it is an open world hacker GTA thing. GTA, but you hack, I suppose. That's kind of, suppose, is the way to look at it for Watch Dogs. And then a shit ton of Sword Art games. I'm really not that familiar with Sword Art Online. The gist of it is it's Tron, but anime, and World of Warcraft, right? Something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of Sword Art games. There's a Naruto thing going in there as well. They decided to just throw it in the middle. More Sword Art, more Sword Art. PlayStation Premium as the next tier up from that. Typically get some VR titles, and before that was getting like classic PS1, classic PS2 games. Although I use the term classic rather loosely here, but that was what it was supposed to be. The Vacation Simulator game being added, and then the three Time Splitters games. So Time Splitters 1, Time Splitters 2, and then the portable version, Future Perfect. And then more Sword Art Online, because who doesn't want more Sword Art? Anyway, that's PlayStation Plus. Those are some of the games, and those are a lot of them, that you can play soon-ish, except for the ones that have been delayed. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, for me at least, there was only one game released this week that I had any actual interest in. This is Farewell North by... I'm not sure if it's developed by Moon Eye Studios or just published by them, but they're involved in some way. You play the dog. You're in Scotland. You are, I believe, on your way to... I think you're on your way to a funeral. I'm not sure, with your master. And she's going through some shit, and you're possibly... I don't think you're specifically a therapy dog, but I think the idea is you're there to kind of help her get over it and move on and deal with her grief or something like that. But yeah, you play the dog. You don't play the person. I just like games like this. I don't know. I like playing games where you play the animal rather than the person. And why not play a dog if you get the chance to? Any opportunity? I mean, Okami is obviously the perfect game for that, but still. Moon Eye, I think, are the people behind Lost Ember, which also was a similar you play the animal rather than the person thing. Anyway, it's a good boy. I don't know how well the game is done reviews-wise. I think some people have Some of the reviews have called it out being a little bit jank and a little bit not a great looker in some places, but that's, I mean, you've seen some of the shit I play. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. All right, moving on. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, some kinda, maybe, possibly good news. Huzzah, PUBG's publisher has saved Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush from Microsoft. So this is from VG247, Connor McCarr. So this is news that Krafton something. Is it Krafton Publishing? Is that just their name? Krafton Inc. Okay. So Krafton Inc. have kind of swooped in and bought Tango Gameworks and the IP for Hi-Fi Rush off of Microsoft. They've acquired Tango Gameworks and the award-winning Hi-Fi Rush IP from Microsoft ahead of the studio's closing. If you've never heard of Krafton before, you have probably heard of the two games they're known for, which is PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battleground, and the Callisto Protocol, which you may not be so well known for, which are two games that are kind of heavily marketed towards the West, but Krafton is a South Korean company, so it's kind of a weird setup. We were talking about Krafton last week in regards to the Callisto Protocol, and Schofield, the creative director, seemed to be at odds with the company because they were pushing for things and not giving him time, even though they said they were going to give him time, yada yada yada. So that's why I'm in the realm of this is maybe good news. It may or may not be good news. Who knows? So again, reminder: Tango Gameworks was one of the studios shut down by Microsoft, along with Arcane Austin and Alpha Dog Games. So Arcane Austin and Alpha Dog are still gone. Krafton aren't going to take them, but they are going to take Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush. So they're still losing people, they're still losing their jobs, and the IPs that came with them are probably disappearing as well. Speaking of IPs, Hi-Fi Rush is probably one of the better known games that Tango Gameworks made, but equally, or maybe not equally, but definitely alongside them, The Evil Within was also a Tango Gameworks thing, and Ghostwire Tokyo, just down here, was also Tango Gameworks. Microsoft is keeping those IPs and will probably store them in a bin somewhere and then forget about them. That's my take. My take is those IPs are dead, and that's really disappointing. But up until now, we assumed Hi-Fi Rush was also dead with it, and it won't be now, or at least Krafton own the IP, and Krafton don't have that many IPs, at least, in their portfolio, so it's likely they will make a Hi-Fi Rush 2. Microsoft have a shit ton of IP in their portfolio, and I imagine they don't even know they have like 60% of them. They're doing nothing with them, and they're just sitting on them like a dragon sitting on a hoard. Has no idea what's even in the pile, just that it owns it. That's all they care about. Anyway, so not quite the entire studio will be coming back. In this article, it's mentioned that like they're going to rehire everybody, the 100 employees from Tango Gameworks. That was the plan, but there's a decent chunk of the company who have found jobs elsewhere already, and they're just gonna stick with their new job, and you can't exactly blame them at this point. But I think it's like half, something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but like half of the original team will be coming back to Tango Gameworks, and the other half have already found employment or are already committed to employment elsewhere, or have just left the industry and want nothing to do with it. Whatever it is, they're not going to be back. So it's kind of maybe sort of good news. This is like being acquired by Embracer in some ways. Before we knew how shit Embracer was, it was like, this might be good, this might be bad. As it turned out with Embracer, it was bad, but I guess we'll see with Krafton. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this is what the heck is Valve doing with these informal deadlock NDAs? This is from Brian Francis, a game developer. So there's a bit of a stink this week over Valve's totally not game that is in development right now and is being played by everybody. No, it's not. You didn't hear that. You shut up. Valve definitely aren't working on a hero shooter called Deadlock that close to 200,000 people are playing right now. No, they're not. Anyway, yes, they are totally working on. They're totally working on a hero shooter called Deadlock, even though it has not been officially announced, but it still has a shit ton of people playing it somehow. Valve have invited players to a closed beta for Deadlock, and those people who were invited could invite their friends and so on and so forth. So right now, there's a lot of people. Okay, 18,000. All right. I think I read that as 180,000, then just decided to say 200,000. It's probably more like 20,000 people playing it. Anyway, such invites typically come with NDAs, and these NDAs may or may not be legally enforceable, but typically they do come with them. Valve did not, despite what everyone is saying, Valve did not issue NDAs for people playing Deadlock. All they did was put up a little screen that says, hey, don't share any information about this game, with a little OK button at the bottom. That's it. There's no way is that enforceable. It doesn't say what's going to happen if you don't. This isn't going to say what counts as information. You know, what about the game can I not talk about? What specific things? An NDA would go into all of that. What you are not allowed to say. And so on and so forth. And what would happen if you didn't and you breached it and what have you. And then there's a prompt for you to say OK, but you don't have to press it. You can just press escape without having acknowledged. So there's literally nothing here for them to do. If they were attempting to legally enforce it. So the rest of this article is mostly talking about Steam, or rather Valve using Steam in a kind of monopolistic way, because it's doing a lot of things with Deadlock that no other developer would be able to do. But I would then argue that if any other developer had created its own game platform, they probably could do those kind of things. There's then the question of, you know, is Valve or is Steam, or rather should Valve be precluded from creating games because it owns Steam? It would be kind of the same thing as saying CD Projekt Red shouldn't be making games because they own GOG, or Epic shouldn't be developing games because they own the Epic Game Store, or PlayStation shouldn't be developing because they own, and so on and so forth. So I'm not entirely sure where they're going with that argument, which is why I kind of didn't bother with it. But mostly I'm pointing out because there was discourse, shall we say, online about the journalists who talked about Deadlock, talking about it, presenting it as a journalist, as they should be doing. It is news in the video game space. This is literally what you would do. If you had access, they weren't smart enough to put an NDA down for you, they didn't enforce any legal requirements of you, absolutely this is what a journalist would do. Even if they did force legal requirements, I would almost say you should probably be doing it journalistic ethics-wise. The whole point of journalism is you were meant to be giving the news to the people that it would be of interest to, despite any ethical issue. Well, not necessarily any ethical issues, but you're not meant to kowtow to the corporation, to the big boy. You know, it's meant to be this is of public interest and the public should know about it. And I would also argue the video game developers in general are way too secretive in the first place. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well. Because it's not just, you know, early leaking of games or stuff like that. There's other issues where they're way too secretive for reasons, or for no reason that we'll get into. Maybe the next article, who knows. Anyway, there was a big stink about this journalist, you know, talking about Deadlock and not sticking with this, you know, don't share information about our game. And he just pressed escape to get around it. And, oh, I never said okay, so I can do this, fine. No, like, that's also shitty. But, like, just own it. Own that there's no legal requirement for you to do that, and you're just going to do it anyway, because it's journalism. Don't try to be like, haha, I got one over on you guys. I had an issue with that. I don't have an issue with them presenting the information about Deadlock anyway, because one, it's not really a secret anymore in the first place, even before they started sharing stuff. And two, it's literally their job as a games journalist. But anyway, there were a lot of people online, Reddit, etc., Twitter, and so on, you know, really coming out, you know, to back up Steam, to back up Valve, of all people. Valve, a like multi-billion-dollar corporation. Guys, they don't need you to help them. If they wanted to make this legally enforceable, they could have. And anyway, as it turned out, they banned the guy's account. So they did have some way to enforce people not doing what they asked them to do, even though he never said okay and they shouldn't have been able to do that. There's some arguments on either side of who's being a bigger shithead. but just informing the public about it, that's basic journalism. Right, moving on. Okay, so as I was saying, games companies being way too secretive. This is coming from Video Game Actors Unions, specifically Equity in the UK, but SAG-AFTRA will be talking about this kind of stuff as well. This has come up a couple of times. Anyway, video game actors call for better transparency around disgusting mocap work not disclosed in advance. So this has mostly to do with people being called in to do performance capture or motion capture and not being told ahead of time what they're going to be doing. You know, what performance they're going to be capturing and stuff like that. They don't know ahead of time, which means they can't say no when it becomes something they don't want to do. You know, something they're going to be uncomfortable doing, or it's being done in an environment that is uncomfortable, or something like that. They don't have the labor protections to say no to something like that without getting blacklisted or not asked back to work on it or anything like that, because there's no legal thing for them. They can obviously say no, but then they'll never get work with them ever again, and it's not really an opportunity. Right. Transparency around disgusting motion capture work that is not properly disclosed at the point of booking. So this is coming from an interview with BBC, with casting director Jessica Jeffries, who has also done motion capture work before, a lot of other games. And she recalled a time that she was called for a shoot with absolutely no information about what the work entailed, only to find out that it was a gratuitous sex scene. We get an email or a call from a studio saying we need you on these days for a shoot, and that was all the information we would get. I turned up, was told I would be filming what would turn out to be a graphic rape scene. This act could be watched for as long or as little time as the player wanted through a window, and then the player would shoot the character in the head. It was just purely gratuitous, in my opinion. Now, whether it's gratuitous or not, again, is subjective. The not telling the person ahead of time that they would be involved in that kind of scene, kind of an issue. For a great number of reasons that I hope I don't have to go into for everybody, but obviously they could be a sexual assault survivor. So this might be a triggering thing for them. This might be difficult for them to do in the first place. They may just feel uncomfortable in general because it's a sex scene and don't want to be involved in that way. Even if you are fully clothed, there is still bumping and grinding going on with another person who you potentially don't know. And remember, you're in a mocap suit. That's form-fitting. Anyway. This is coming from a different actor who's talking about it, saying that they absolutely love the industry, but definitely calling for better disclosures ahead of time, especially as actors have to sign NDAs, and they're then told nothing ahead of filming, so they can't even talk about it afterwards. That, hey, this is what I was asked to film, and that's not okay, but it's like, now you've broken your NDA. Have you, though? Again, there's another question around whether NDAs are legally enforceable or not, but if you don't understand necessarily the law around them, or if the law itself is a bit vague on whether NDAs are legally enforceable, you're going to err on the side of they are and not breach your NDA so that you can keep working in the industry. Anyway, that obviously has its own chilling effect. In one recording for a major game, she first learned it was explicit only when she turned up for work. This was actually a full-on sex scene. I had to vocally match the scene, and through the glass in the booth with the entire team, all male, watching me. So they weren't necessarily acting it out, but they were doing the voice work for it. So they were in the, grunts and heavy breathing or whatever. Everybody looking at them, all men. That's obviously going to be bad. Nobody wants to be in that position. It was excruciating at that stage. I had been in the game industry a while, and I had never felt so shaken. What upset me so much about the situation is I was put on the spot. Nobody thought to ask me if I was okay with it, and nobody checked if I was okay afterwards. So this is another call to have intimacy coordinators on hand for this kind of thing if it's going to be these kind of difficult scenes. Sex scenes are very like graphic assault, not necessarily sexual assaults, but just assault in general, this kind of thing. This is going to be a lot of people that you necessarily don't know. You're going to be put into difficult positions, sexual positions, or just vulnerable positions in general. Calling them intimacy coordinators is probably not necessarily correct, even though typically they'd be brought in for like sexual scenes, but it could also just be coordinators in general. So that everyone feels comfortable doing what they're doing, everybody knows what they're doing, they're told way ahead of time and have plenty of time to say no or to adjust or something. This is something that the performers in Baldur's Gate 3 were all very happy about how it was implemented there. But Larian Studios did bring in intimacy coordinators, and if you played that game, there's a lot of sex going on in that game. Anyway, it's just to point out that the video game's tendency towards secrecy hurts not just the public, it hurts the people working there too. It hurts, as you can see, the performance actors who can't talk about times when they've had difficult scenes. And not difficult in a technical sense, difficult in this is shit I am extremely uncomfortable doing. And it's borderline illegal for me to be doing it without being told ahead of time, maybe. Then you have developers who are working on games for a very long time under NDA, and then the game is cancelled. They can't talk about it now. It's 5 years on their resume that it's what were you doing for those 5 years? Legally, not. I can't tell you. And you have an employer going, yeah, okay, cool. Or are they going to go, yeah, sure. You were just fucking off for 5 years. You can't rebut them. You can't say no, but I was doing this thing, but I can't tell you because I'll be sued. That's why the secrecy is a problem. Moving on. All right, game we haven't heard from in fucking ages. Star Wars Eclipse's lead writer has left Quantic Dream to start a new studio, so things are obviously going very well there at Quantic Dream. Quantic Dream, the people behind the David Cage things, Detroit Become Human, the Ellen Elliott Page one. Fuck's that game called? Beyond. Heavy Rain. It's probably the one most people know. Anyway, that's all Quantic Dream. They were brought in to work on Star Wars. Star Wars Eclipse was meant to be set in and around the High Republic, which is kind of Knights of the Old Republic era. I think a little bit before that even. Set in an unknown area of the Outer Rim, they effectively had just a blank slate. They could do whatever they wanted. And that was announced in... I'm going to say it was announced in 2015, but that's not true. No, that's when the guy joined. 2021. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It's been a while. Haven't heard anything about it. And now the lead writer is leaving to start their own studio. It's probably safe to say there's some problems. There's probably some problems with Star Wars Eclipse. Cool. Anyway, they are leaving to start their own studio, and it does sound like they are taking a couple of people from Quantic Dream with them. I've already been in touch with many of you guys at Quantic Dream. Oh no, to thank you for your time. Thank you to your team. A big thank you to the team for taking the leap with us, to the investors and being ideal partners for the next adventure. More on that soon. So it does sound like he's taken some people from Quantic Dream and potentially some of the investors from it as well, and they're going to go work on their own thing. Whether they're pulling Star Wars Eclipse with them, I kind of doubt it, but maybe, but I wouldn't think so. Anyway, moving on. All right, last thing. Hype Modern Warfare 2 remastered multiplayer mod, that was a lot of M's, killed one day before launch. So Activision giving the people what they want by not giving the people what they want, I suppose. So this is news that there was a fan mod that was coming out, that was going to be coming out for Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare Remastered, that would recreate and put in remastered maps of the online multiplayer section of Modern Warfare 2. Because when it was initially launched, it was only the campaign that was updated for remastering, whereas the multiplayer was not. However, they were able to take some of the maps from Modern Warfare... Modern Warfare Remastered... Sorry, COD 4. They were able to take the maps from that and sub it into Modern Warfare 2 Remastered instead. And that's what they were all gearing up to do. It was going to be coming out yesterday, I think, is when the mod was supposed to come out, until Activision went, yeah, no. No. Don't do that. Thanks. What's doubly kind of frustrating here is that game has been at the very close to the top or at the top of Steam charts for the last 2 weeks or so because of this news. Because people were hearing that the maps were going to get remastered, this mod was coming out, it was going to make it fun, and we could jump back into the multiplayer thing that everybody likes, because Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer was the best it's ever been or something. I don't know, I never played it. So it's been at the top of the charts for a very long time. Obviously making sales, making Activision money, only for them to go, no. Anyway, players weren't happy about the news, especially because for the last week or so, Modern Warfare Remastered has been on sale on Steam, letting tons of players buy the game at a discount as they waited for the mod to launch. So many people bought it, in fact, because of the mod, that it jumped into the top 5 best-selling games on Steam. On social media, players are sharing messages that they are returning the game and downvoting it. Currently, Modern Warfare Remastered has a mostly negative review on Steam, and it did this morning as well. And I assume that is still the case, because getting it away from a mostly negative is actually quite difficult. It requires more. I forget the way they do the ranking thing, but it's like one really negative review requires like 5 positive reviews or something to undo it. So if you manage to go from like really positive all the way down to mostly negative, gonna need a lot of positivity to get all the way back. Not that Activision gives a shit, of course. Like a smaller developer would care about this kind of thing. Oh, Activision don't give a shit. We have Microsoft money now. Fuck you. Fuck you, you'll buy it. You'll buy it when the next one comes out anyway, so who cares? Anyway, being very shitty to the people who make them money, but, you know, that hasn't exactly been different for Activision. Okay, what's going on in the community? Fallout London's volunteer modding team to launch as a new indie studio. So this is pretty cool news. So the Team Folon, that worked on Fallout London, which is that huge mod for Fallout 4 that effectively turned it into a brand new game, are planning to launch their own studio. As much as I love the fact that it is a free project, that we can offer this thing for free for all of the community, free doesn't pay our bills. So next game they make, you're probably going to have to pay for it. We should hopefully launch our own indie games company, which will allow us to come up with our own ideas, create our own games, and work without having to speak to anyone above us, such as Bethesda or anything like that. It'll be completely our own thing. We can create a game that we want, that we think the community will enjoy. Fallout London has been a great springboard for that. So it's pretty cool that this kind of project that they started over lockdown, COVID, potentially launch like a career studio that has the backing of a pretty strong fan community at this point. As I understand it, Fallout London is still a bit buggy, but it has gotten a bit more stable since the launch, and they're still working on it. They don't, I think, necessarily have plans to stop working on it for at least the rest of the year in any case. A kind of interesting tidbit here, though, is that they were asked if Bethesda had reached out to them to talk to them about Fallout London now that it had been launched or anything like that or whatever, and they were like, no, they haven't. There hasn't been any communication, which is strange because we've now had communication from plenty of other people in the industry, and people who I would guess they would be seen as their competitors. They've reached out to us and we've spoken to them, but Bethesda themselves have not spoken to us. No. Although Team Folon are quick to follow up with, we're not like expecting them to. We don't. We're not like demanding an audience with them or like entitled to an audience or whatever. But it's just kind of weird that literally everyone else did and Bethesda didn't. But also, it's not exactly surprising. Bethesda kind of try to ignore the modding community as much as possible. They're aware of it, and they're aware their games are heavily modded. And I think they rely a little bit on the fact that their games are heavily modded. But they also just ignore them entirely and break a lot of mods when they make updates and stuff like that. I just don't think they give a shit. Because again, we got Microsoft money now. Fuck you. Moving on. What else is going on in the community? Doom modders are annoyed at the chum bucket of wrongly credited mods in the latest Doom remaster. So, during QuakeCon last week, there was a Doom 1 and 2 remaster that was put out onto PC, a couple of consoles as well, and it had a built-in browser for a bunch of mods that would work with Doom 1 and Doom 2. And it was a very easy, just browse the mod you want, press the button, apply it to the game, off you go. It had very little friction in just enjoying some of the mods. The problem is, as it turns out, this is not curated in any way whatsoever. So there's basically a lot of good fan-made mods out there, but they're attributed to the wrong person. Or there's a lot of very low-effort mods that are just mixed in with some of the better ones, and it's not a great look, really, for the mod community in general. The mod browser lacks moderation and lets people upload the work of others with their own name pinned as the author. This is a massive breach of trust and a shitty thing for id and ZeniMax to do to a community that created the phenomenon they are now monetizing. I mean, you didn't create the game, exactly. You created the mod, sure. And there should be some acknowledgement of that, but created the phenomenon they are now monetizing? No, you didn't. Guys, come on. I mean, ZeniMax didn't either. Like, it was id, but still. Anyway, so there's essentially two lists of mods on the games. There's the created one, that is properly moderated. It's from like official Doom mods, stuff made by John Romero himself. There's a couple of other ones that are like pretty like highly polished mods. And then there's the rest, essentially, which is a giant chum bucket of random shit people have uploaded. That's how it was described. There's more than 700 mods available in the browsable list, and it's just random stuff. You can pretty much just upload whatever files you feel like, and put whatever text you want, go with it, and it just doesn't go through an approval process of any sort. Given how quickly stuff has gone up in the past couple of hours, there's clearly pretty much zero vetting going on. You can just say, yeah, this is my mod, or not, and just put random garbage in the text. And I'm assuming unless it flags for like specific, I don't know, curse words or slurs or something. Like, I'd imagine it's very cursory, no pun intended, filtering going on for their moderation process. I doubt there's anybody looking at it to make sure the mod works in the first place, that the mod belongs to the person who says it belongs to, and so on. Highly unlikely they're bothering. Because again, this is ZeniMax and Bethesda. They don't give a shit about the modding community. What I immediately saw and hated was random shitheads' names beneath community works, clearly uploaded without anyone's permission. Anyway, it's not clear how ZeniMax will address the issue. Yes, it is. It's very clear how they'll address the issue. They won't. That's it. That's how they'll address it. Anyway, I believe Farewell North, because it's literally the only game of the new releases this week. So that is your weekly news recap for the 12th to the 18th of August 2024. A lot of games getting their news updates, delays, release dates, all of that out before Gamescom. Because Gamescom will be next week. That will take a lot of press coverage. So they're clearly, I would say, there's probably a few of these games that aren't going to be at Gamescom and just trying to get their news out early, or they are going to be at Gamescom and they want the press to like give them a refresher and go, hey, I'm going to be there, you should check us out, something like that. Anyway, speaking of Gamescom, that is Tuesday the 20th. I'm debating on whether or not we will do a stream of it. Anytime I've done streams for these kind of things before, it's been pretty quiet in the chat, so probably just keep it to myself and we'll talk about it on Weekly News Recap. But if you feel different, let me know in the Discord. You know, just jump in, chat, whatever, or on whatever other social media thing you want to find me on. Anyway, so yeah, lots of games getting new release dates, lots of games getting delayed as well. It's been quite a few now at this point, not just this week, but if you add up all of the ones that have been delayed into next year, there's a fair number of them at this point. Anyway, I guess they must be trying to avoid the 2024 crush of stuff coming out, because as you saw, September is going to be a pretty heavy month. Monthly games, the PlayStation Plus catalog. Again, I have a lot of the, like, I have The Witcher 3, which I played a lot of, and I've played Cult of the Lamb to death, really. Didn't have a ton of what's the word, interest in Wild Hearts, because it's just Monster Hunter, and Monster Hunter is better. Or at least everything I've seen of Wild Hearts, Monster Hunter looks a lot better. And also, Monster Hunter's been around a whole lot longer. It's had plenty of time to flesh out its systems. As Wild Hearts is kind of trying to do all of that in one go. It's obviously not going to have the time to do it, or the money to do it. And EA, as was expected, as soon as the game didn't make all of the money in the world immediately, just abandoned it. Which Capcom don't typically do. Not always. I mean, they are shutting down Exoprimal, but they gave it like a year. Maybe? Did they even give it a year? Did they only give it 6 months? I don't know. Anyway. I mean, Monster Hunter is somewhat treated like a live service. At least the new ones are. But they're just not heavily onto like seasonal content and shit like that. You know, they put out some interesting things every now and then, but it's always accessible. So, anyway. New releases you're looking at here. Farewell North was the only one that was really interesting to me. That's not to say there weren't other games that came out this week. This just, I wasn't particularly interested in, so this is the only one I was talking about. Industry bullshit. It's good that someone has rescued Hi-Fi Rush. We'll get more of that, and those people will keep their jobs, which is kind of the more important point. So we're not losing talented people. Either we'll just leave the industry entirely, or they'll end up having to join one of the bigger companies who'll just bury them with shitty jobs and they won't really get to flex any of their creativity. So this is kind of one of the better outcomes expecting for Tango Gameworks. It's a bit sad that Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo will probably never get sequels. It's unlikely Microsoft will delve into their big barrel of IP that they have now. They'll just be thrown in there with the rest of them and forgotten about. God, you could do this a whole series on IP that Microsoft has just completely ignored. Again, I don't even think they know they own it, is the thing. They must know they own Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo. They're too recent, but there must be tons that they just... Oh, it didn't do incredible blockbuster numbers immediately the first hour it was released. Oh, nope, throw it in the bin. Anyway, the stuff about secrecy, again, with Deadlock's weird NDA stuff, even though everybody knows they're making the game, but it hasn't been officially announced, so you're meant to keep it a secret, but everybody knows. Like, why bother at this point? Just announce it already. I mean, we do know the real reason. It's probably stock price, but still. The stuff around voice actors and performance, actors wanting more, transparency on the work they'll be doing. Like, you can say keeping some of that stuff secret from the public. Again, not entirely sure why they're bothering. I guess spoiler reasons, I suppose, is one particular thing. Like, people are... I say people, I included. I don't want to be spoiled on a game story. But these are people who are going to be working on the game. You can't really spoil them on it. It's literally, they're going to know. It's like, they kind of have to know. Because you imagine if you had to act in something and they didn't tell you the entire plot. You only learned the plot as you were acting. So it's like, how are you supposed to do any kind of foreshadowing? You can only write the plot as you go. You can't spoil the writer on the story, even though he has to write the fucking thing. Like, somebody gets spoiled. People who are working on it should probably get spoiled. Unless you're like, I don't know, I guess the Dungeon Master in D&D does sort of make up the story as they're going. Anyway, I don't do that. I plan well ahead. Shut up. Anyway, community stuff. Pretty cool. Team Folon, Fallout London, starting their own company. There's a similar modding community in the VR space called Flat to VR, who did a lot of, as you might expect, as it probably sounds, they took a lot of games from their flat mode, the non-VR mode, as it's called, to VR. So they ported a lot of games that were like first-person shooters, and they port them into VR. A lot of mods for that kind of thing. They have their own company now, where they specifically are going to be doing that. There was a VR showcase earlier this week that did show off a couple of those things. They're still pretty heavily in development, so I don't think they're going to be out anytime soon. Was it Flat Out, I think? Was one of the racing games they have going. It looks pretty good. Like, it looks really good in VR. And I don't like racing games, but this looks really good. Anyway, the Doom mod situation, I mean, from what I had seen on live services, I kind of assumed that's what was happening. That this was not moderated in any way. But live streams, not live services. Any live streams I had seen of the Doom 1 and 2 remasters. Yeah, I mean, that's ZeniMax for you. That's Bethesda for you. They don't give a shit about their modding community, even though it's incredibly important to their games, but they still don't give a shit about them. Anyway, moving on. That was the news, but what is happening on the channel next week or this week? Okay, so here's the wall of games. No huge changes this time. Final Fantasy V we have finished. We'll talk about that soon. And I've added in Final Fantasy VI because we'll probably get around to it before the end of the year. Something we do have to replace replaced, because that's not coming out this year anymore, as it has been delayed. We'll need to move that and put something else in its place, or replace it. I have swapped out the Inquisitor for Final Fantasy VI because I just don't think I'm going to get around to it, and I'm kind of losing interest in playing it at this point. The story just sounded really silly, and it did appeal to me, but the gameplay it's like more jank than I was expecting. I was expecting it to be jank, but it's pretty jank. I don't know, I'm still thinking about it. I might just do a fully plays games a bit of it instead. Anyway. So, we finished Final Fantasy V this week. It took a while. because this is kind of the first time that the Final Fantasy games start to get quite long. We did finish it 100% platinum trophy, what have you. So we're still 5 for 5 for platinum trophies right now. We'll see if we can keep that going. I doubt it, but we'll see if we can keep that going. I quite liked 5. It doesn't have a great story, and it's to say that it doesn't really have a story at all for the most part. At least it has more of a story than Final Fantasy 3 did. I did like its job system, or its classes system, if you prefer. They're called jobs in Final Fantasy, where you can be like a black mage, a white mage, samurai, a knight, a thief, this kind of stuff. They all give you different abilities and different stats, skills, and stuff like that. What I liked about Final Fantasy V system is that you could master a job and then take the abilities from that job that you've mastered and like put them in a different job. So like you could have like the ninja dual wields and no other job can dual wield. But if you master dual wielding, you can then go into the knight job instead. And the knight can now dual wield. You know, that kind of thing. You could have the dragoon can carry 2 spears now. Like this kind of stuff. Or have the knight be able to use the dragoon's jump. I don't know why you'd bother with that, but let's say they could do that. Or if you had mastered monk, you could now take a barehanded white mage. You know? And the white mage could counter attack people and shit like that. There's a lot of really cool mixes. Now, by the time you get to the end of the game, that does essentially mean that you've mastered every job and everybody can do everything, and now the characters don't have any real differences between them. That is one downside to that system, but that's only if you grind the shit out of the game like I did for 100%. So it's definitely you could get through the game by having, okay, one character takes these set of jobs, and this character takes this set of jobs. You can make a really interesting character out of that. Anyway, that's what I liked about 5. We're going to move on to 6 eventually. Not right away. We're going to play something in between before we get to Final Fantasy 6. And definitely we're going to finish one of the other games we have ongoing before we start playing Final Fantasy 6. But that will be the last game that I haven't played in the series. As I mentioned in yesterday's stream, it's not the last game that I haven't finished. There's a few Final Fantasy games I haven't finished, but it's the only one I haven't played at all, is 6. And it is also one that is usually in the top 5s of your favorite Final Fantasy game, depending on who you ask. It's typically in the top 5, and a lot of time it's in the top 3. So I'm expecting something good. It better be a good game. I'm probably going to be very disappointed. Anyway, moving on. So our schedule for next week is pretty basic, guys. We're just going to alternate between Resi and System Shock. Those are the 2 games we have running at the moment. There is going to be a D&D session next week. There might be multiple D&D sessions next week, so I might miss a couple of streams. But that won't really be any different because I've been missing a lot of streams recently anyway. And that's just depression. That's what it does. You'll notice I didn't do a section of me, what was I playing off stream this week, because I didn't. I sat in my gaming chair with the PlayStation on and just didn't play anything. Gotta love a bit of depression. Alright, anyway. I'll get around to playing something, maybe. I don't know. We will come back to Resi 5 and System Shock though. So Resi 5, we are beyond the halfway mark. We're going to start getting into the stuff where Wesker shows up, and we get into the more modern side of the game. We're almost through the ancient ruin section, if anyone remembers it. We're going to be coming out the opposite side of that, and then we're going to end up on the tanker, and it's going to be like missiles and stealth bomber shit, and the bit where we end up in a volcano. God, that game gets weird. Anyway, and then System Shock, we haven't played since the first part, and I'm honestly thinking that I might need to restart it because I don't quite remember what I was doing. I won't restart it on stream. We'll just pick back up from where I stopped. But yeah, I might have to play it off stream again because I don't remember what I was doing. Anyway, that is the plan. We'll be back around to the weekly news recap on Sunday, and as I said, there will be at least one D&D session next week. So at least one of these streams probably won't happen, but I will try to keep it even between Resident Evil 5 and System Shock. We'll try to do the equivalent number of games, equivalent number of streams. And then the week after that, I will decide on what is going to replace Final Fantasy 5 Unless I finished one of these. And in that case, we might just jump straight into 6. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Because I want to have 6 finished before the end of the year so we can start into Final Fantasy 14, the MMO. As I know, like 6 is going to be long. It's probably not going to be like 4 months long, which is probably won't be that bad, but it still should probably get started on it soon enough. Anyway, that's it from me though for today. So we're gonna have alternating Resi 5 and System Shock Remake next week on stream. Hopefully I'll see you on some of them, but for now, I'm gonna sign off. Have a good rest of your day, and see you on Tuesday. Bye.